First, on January 27, 2020, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 27, 2020, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 27, 2020, said notice was posted in the office of the Planning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are on your right at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. And just some housekeeping, we will be maintaining social distancing. So if the attorney for each applicant would sit at the table and use that mic, and anyone who's testifying can stand at the lectern, we would appreciate that.
Roll call, please, Eileen.
Mr. Bozovic has been excused. Mr. Dorado has been excused. Mr. Husser has been excused. Chief Kudrick?
Present.
Mr. Leggio?
Present.
Mr. Nicastro has been excused. Mr. Seaman?
Here.
Mr. Bovai has been excused. Mr. Everett?
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Here.
And Chairman Tannenhouse has been excused. So the first order of business, I think, tonight is to...
Members of the board, we
The
don't have
chairman.
our chairman or vice chair here tonight, so we have to elect a temporary chairman. The only eligible members for chair are the Class 4 members. So, Eileen, I think we only have 2 tonight?
Yes, Mr. Seaman and Mr. Leggio.
So if there's a motion to have Mr. Seaman or Mr. Leggio serve as temporary chairman tonight?
I'll make a motion to have Mr. Seaman serve as temporary chairman tonight.
I'll second that.
Okay. Take a roll call.
Chief Kudrick?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
And Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, Chairman Seaman, it's your meeting.
All right. With that, would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence after? Chief, if you would, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. First order of business is approval of minutes. I need a motion and a second for the minutes for the regular meeting, July 16th, 2020. Eligible voters are Mr. Everett, Deputy Mayor O'Donnell, and myself.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of July 16, 2020.
Eileen, call the roll, please.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Chairman Seaman?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Do we have any vouchers, Eileen?
We have no vouchers this evening.
Any correspondence?
I have no correspondence this evening.
Okay, we'll move on to resolutions. First resolution is for case number SD 2978F, Edward and Lourdes McNamee, granting submission waivers. Eligible voters are Deputy Mayor O'Donnell, Mr. Everett, and myself. I'm requesting a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion for case number SD 2978F.
Eileen, call the roll, please.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Chairman Seaman?
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolutions memorialized.
Next is case number SP 1074, 1300 Equities LLC, resolution granting submission waivers. Eligible voters are Mr. Everett, Deputy Mayor O'Donnell, and myself. Do I have a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion to grant submission waivers for SP 1074.
Second.
Eileen, call the roll, please.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Chairman Seaman?
Yes,
Motion carries, resolutions memorialized.
thank you. Are there any submission waivers?
No submission waivers this evening.
Okay, with that, we will move to our first application before the board tonight, case number SP 1074, 1300 Equities LLC, for an amended preliminary and finer major site plan.
Good evening, Salvatore Alfieri, Cleary, Giacobi, Alfieri, and Jacobs on behalf of the applicant. Just by way of brief summary of why we're here tonight, there was an application back about five years ago or so for Mr. Brian Hegarty. Was under application SP 1032. That application approved a 4,332 square foot multi-tenanted building. That the approval for that building was for a power wash company and a second tenant who was not identified. My client, that property, it has not been built. My client bought the property and intends to build, from a site plan point of view, exactly what was approved by this board many years ago. The only changes that he's proposing, and the reason we're here tonight, is because he's changing the use from the power wash company and tenant to one user. So we are here to present to you the use that we intend to put this property to if it's approved, and then he would build the building. We also are looking to change the exterior view of the building. The facade change is much more attractive. What we're proposing, we brought our architect who will take 2 minutes to show you what was approved and what they're proposing to build instead. Footprint and size of the building, everything's identical, it's just the facade. And then we have a traffic engineer, Justin Taylor, who's going to testify briefly, just so you are comfortable that the proposed use and the trucks that need to access the site can circulate safely and that there's adequate parking. So having said that, we're going to call Mr. DeFazio, who's the principal of the applicant, and he's going to describe for you what he intends to do at this property. And while he's coming up, the board approved 4 variances at the original approval. None of those variances are changing in any way, since the site is not changing in any way. We're just, again, changing the facade of the building and the use within the building.
Mr. DeFazio, swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
John DeFazio, D-I-F-A-Z-I-O.
And John, how are you associated with 1300 Equities LLC?
I'm one of the principal owners.
And you are also going to be the owner, if this is approved, of the business that's going to be operated at this property, is that correct?
Yes.
What business is that?
ESCO Truck and Equipment.
Can you describe for the board what ESCO Truck and Equipment does and what it would be doing specifically at this property?
Mr. DeFazio, can you just spell ESCO? Is it E-S-C-O?
E-S-S-C-O.
Mr. DeFazio, can you just raise that mic up a little so you, yeah, that's better, so we can pick you up. Thank you.
Okay, great.
So what does ESCO do?
We are retail sales and service of link belt excavators and allied construction equipment.
And for those of us who don't know what that is, can you just generally describe what that product is?
We sell construction excavators and allied construction line of equipment, which is hammers and drivers. A lot of the drivers are used to drive piles in some of the developments in Ocean County. A lot of builders use them for wood piles on different developments.
So what would happen on site if this were approved and built? What exactly would you be doing on site?
So most of our equipment would be PDI, which is pre-delivery inspected here on site. We would bring the equipment in. A lot of our equipment goes directly to the job site after we PDI it. So we would bring stock in, prep it, and send it out to the customer.
And what would the hours of operation be?
Monday to Friday, 7 to 5, and Saturdays, 7 to 1.
How many employees will work on site at your peak hours?
We're estimating 4 employees.
And what would the employees on site do?
We're gonna have somebody there responsible for parts. We'd have a service tech there. The second service tech would be there also. The salesman would be, the sales director would be in and out. So the 4 people would be there to support operations.
And in the original approval, there was a prohibition against outdoor activity except for storage of equipment. You can abide by that prohibition as well, and there'll be no outdoor activity,
Yes,
and you'll just store your equipment in the designated areas.
yes.
In terms of, are you going to do mechanical work on site?
All the maintenance and mechanical work, the answer is yes, but it'll be indoors.
All right, and the breakdown of the floor plan that we presented was 3,000 square feet would be for retail sales and service, and then you'd have 1,332 square feet for inventory and storage.
Parts inventory and storage.
Okay, and that would be, that floor plan is how you'll operate the business.
Exactly.
There are 3 tanks that were approved as part of the original Hegarty application, and you intend to keep those 3 tanks, is that correct?
Yes.
And what would you store in those tanks?
So there's a total of 1,500 gallons of storage tanks approved. His original plan was 500 of diesel, 500 of soaps, and 500 of bleach. We would like to keep that same bulk quantity, break it up between diesel, again, based upon what's allowable under the fire rules, but we'd like to break it up with motor oil, hydraulic oil, diesel, and stay within the 1,500 gallon limit.
And the fire official issued a report for this application, and it basically said that it's the same report and the same conditions of approval as the 2017 approval, and that report is dated June 4th of 2020, and he lists 5 conditions, and some of them deal with the tanks. You would agree as a condition of approval to comply with all 5 of those conditions?
Yes, I reviewed that document, and I would agree with that condition.
Can you describe for the board the types of vehicles that would visit this site and how frequently they would visit the site?
Well, when we did our traffic flow, we based it on a WB50 tractor trailer, and then we would also have some flat trucks delivering and box trucks delivering. When I reviewed this with our traffic engineer, I'm basing it on current business model at one of our other places of business. We're probably getting a box truck delivery every other day and a tractor trailer delivery once a week. When we bring stock in, of course, when we first stock the facility, there'll be a little bit of uptick of deliveries, but we think based upon what we're doing now, it will be very similar to that.
That's all the questions we have of Mr. Fazio.
Just a quick question regarding excavators. I mean, I know they can be quite large. And on the flat trucks, do you anticipate having any situations where you have like an oversized load? And if so, has that been factored into it?
So we use the WB50, which is our most common. This marketplace of this particular equipment, most of it is up to a 24 metric ton, which can fit on that WB50. This brand is not really in that higher market. We only have 2 other models, and we're not specifically very strong in that marketplace. So we're really strong in what I call mid-size machines. And if you look at our current population, we're right in that mid-size excavator machine, which would come in on that WB50 model. So again, we sell new equipment, so there will be some models that are stored, and we've definitely accounted for that in our plan. Most of the equipment that comes in will then be shipped directly to the job.
But there'll be.
No.
And then as far as service-wise, they'll come back to your facility and be serviced there if need be?
So we run a fleet of service trucks. It's very common in our industry to do services on the job site.
Sure, right
So
to the
we're
site.
running 4 to 5 service trucks now. The only time it would come back would be for a major service. Other than that, we're used to doing everything out in the field.
Okay, and as far as anything going on your site, hazardous material-wise, we have a plan for spillage and cleanup and?
Oh, of course, there would be a full safety plan. We have that in place at our other facility now. We hire a specialist to help us with that, and it'll be full in full
That's one of our
compliance.
main concerns is that, you know.
Of course.
This is pretty much like the Bobcat facility down by,
Where's your other facility, sir? You say
The other, we have one facility up in New York right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm comfortable.
Would you refresh my memory? The private road that's off-site, but it looks like it actually is coming out right to the tip of your property. That private road is someone's driveway? Or literally a private road?
Past our site, I'm not sure which road you're referring to.
Is this going where the old Clubhouse Tavern used to be, right across
Yeah,
from the
we did
senior?
a demolition on that recently,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, so Mayor, that is, it's a private drive, almost like a paper street that leads to a resident in the back of the property back there.
Way back?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can still see it from the road,
Yeah.
but it's a distance.
it's where the
Thanks,
Powerwall
yeah.
Sky Parks, right? It's just before the circle.
Yes.
Before JB's
Yeah.
Diner.
Yes.
So most of your traffic will probably be coming off of 18th from 34 right there anyway,
Yeah,
right past Secudis.
yeah,
That's probably, you know, you got major, that's a major hub right there anyway, so.
yes.
All right.
Right, and there was a DOT permit issue that would not have to be amended per the traffic engineer because they already have the permit from the state.
Yeah, that's
For the
fine.
access traffic.
That's fine.
I have nothing else.
Public questions, right?
It's all answered.
What's that, Zane?
It was all answered already.
Open to public?
No, not
Oh. Oh, thank you. All right, before the next witness, do any of our professionals have any questions?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
I have a quick question. With regard to the fleet vehicles that service the vehicles off-site in the field, which facility did those trucks park at? Where are they, what's their home base?
So a lot of times in this industry, we allow the mechanic to take the trucks home. If not, they're brought back to the facility, but I would tell you my standard practice right now is the mechanics take the trucks home with them.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Do it, open,
No, you can
next
open at
witness,
the end.
right. Mr. Alfieri, next witness, please.
Next witness is Mike Monroe, our architect, and he has two plans to show you, the facade that was approved and the facade we're proposing. Mike?
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Michael James Monroe, M-O-N-R-O-E.
And Mike, you're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey,
Yes.
and you've been testified before boards and your credentials have been accepted.
We testified before this board several times, and yes.
Eileen, I don't know if any of these were marked and I didn't see them, so we'll
They are
mark them
not
and
marked.
leave them.
Yeah.
So we're just going to show you really the one elevation of each, and if you need to see more elevations, we can
Alright,
show
so
you, but
we're going to start with A4.
there was A4, what was originally approved?
A4 is just an elevation page of what was originally approved.
And what's the date of that?
Okay. Two blocks.
It's 8/10/18.
That's what I was showing. So this is what was originally approved. We'll mark it before I turn, and then we'll just turn this around.
Yeah, I can put it next to it, sorry.
Okay,
Identify the next
this
one.
will be A5.
So this is just the elevation sheet. It's A3.1. It's dated 7/22/20. So this is what was submitted to you. So basically, we had what was approved and what we're proposing now. And the original structure, it's identical height, identical perimeter footprint. The other structure was a pole barn, and I think metal siding, it wasn't really called out. This is going to be a concrete block building, and be more substantial building. And we try to bring into some of your architectural requirements in terms of alternating facades in and out and going up and down the roof lines. And also, we're going to use color. So we couldn't do too much. I have some smaller offsets, but we're going to use darker and lighter shades of tan or gray, and then a light color on the trim up top. And all these trim pieces wrap around and become nice three-dimensional pieces, so as you're going down the road, the building's gonna feel much more three-dimensional. And this whole centerpiece we made more substantial than the last design. It was a pretty big building with a pretty small entrance. We made it a little more substantial so you know where the front of the building was, and kept it symmetrical. And that's basically it. It's gonna be two different shades, gonna have a nice stone base to it. There was a little shed roof on the left-hand side. It looked like too much like a residential shed. We made it look a little bit more contemporary, but really it's identical footprint. Block building, truss roof, and other than that, that's basically the exterior.
That's all we have of the architect, unless you have other questions. And Mike, what you're going to do is, you don't need to show that. But you're going to mark, when you're finished, you're going to take these off. I marked one A4, you can mark that A5 and give it to Eileen. But Mr. Monroe is prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Does any member of the board have any questions for Mr. Monroe? Nope. Professionals, any questions? Okay.
Last witness, Justin.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Justin Taylor, Taylor.
And Mr. Taylor, we're seeking to have you qualified as a traffic expert. Can you just briefly present your credentials?
Absolutely. I'm a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey. I'm also a certified professional traffic operations engineer by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. We're practicing traffic planning for about 20 years now, and definitely testified before this board on several occasions.
And we wanted you to testify on 2 points. Number one is the adequacy of the parking that's on site, 22 spaces, and then the second is to make sure that that WV50 can circulate throughout the site.
So absolutely. When we first looked at the application from a parking standpoint, we really sat down with the applicant, Mr. DeFazio, to figure out what kind of use he was proposing. Because the ordinance doesn't really contemplate what he's doing. It doesn't really fit the standard retail mode, and nothing else within the ordinance actually kind of fits that business model. You know, you hear he's got 4 employees, and if he has a couple customers a day, that's a lot. So if you were to look at your ordinance, if you were to take the retail, the 3,000 square feet, it would say you need 20 spaces. The remainder, the 1,300 plus or minus, at a warehouse would require 1 more space. So we're at an actual ordinance requirement of 21 spaces. He really only needs 7 or 8 of them. So the ones up front will most likely be utilized for his customers and his employees. And the back, that way, that gives some area for him to park his new equipment, and if the old equipment that's coming in to be serviced is waiting to be picked up, he's got the room in the back to be able to use those extra spaces. So I think there's plenty of parking, one, to meet the ordinance requirement, but more importantly, really to service the use that's being proposed here. The other thing we looked at was the circulation, that we wanted to make sure that he could get his delivery trucks on and off the site. And we worked hand in hand with him, again, to figure out what trailers he actually used to deliver this equipment, having come to and from the port, and also out to the job sites. And what we determined was that a WB50, an Astro vehicle, really most closely simulated what he was bringing to the site. So we circulated that through to ensure that it can come in through the curb cuts that were proposed by and approved by the DOT, as well as to get completely around the building without any impact to the parking spaces or the building. And we're completely confident that that vehicle can circulate without any issues.
Would you agree as a condition of approval to provide a turning template to the town so that CME can review that?
Absolutely.
That's all we have of Mr. Taylor.
Board have any questions for Mr. Taylor?
This is well done. So,
Any comments on circulation or traffic from the professionals?
No, Mr. Chairman, my only comment was going to be to make sure that we get that plan which shows that the WV50 can circulate. So they already agreed to that, so I have nothing at this time.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you.
And Shari doesn't get to say anything. What is she?
Mr. Alfieri, you have anything
That's all we
else?
have. We just need you to open up to the public, and that would conclude our presentation.
All right, at this point, we will open it up to the public if anybody has any questions of the previous witness or comments.
Sir, you need to come up to the microphone.
Sure.
And then when you get up there, I'll need to swear you in first. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I'm just going to get, yes.
Can you state and spell your name for the record?
Guy Vastola, V-A-S-T-O-L-A,
And your address?
1299 Highway 33, across the street.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Vastola.
My concern is I just would like to know if there's any noise factor that I would have to contend with, because I'm a recording studio and I built for a certain business that was there years ago, and if there's anything that I would need to know before we...
Well, Mr. DeFazio could come up, but we already stipulated that there'll be no outdoor activity of any kind, so it would just be what's parked. But John, if you have a specific, I'm not sure what else he could say.
I mean,
Mr. Alfieri, one of the things you could probably discuss is our noise ordinance isn't even part of our zoning ordinance. It's its own requirement, and we can't give any relief from that. So they're not permitted to exceed the noise permitted in that area.
okay, so it's, I guess, status quo, how it's always been. The noise will be...
I don't know if it's going to be status quo, but it can't exceed what the law requires as the maximum permitted.
Okay, is there, do we know what that is? Is there a certain...
I believe the ordinance speaks to the decibel level as well as the hours in which any outdoor activity could take place. Again, they had testified that there would be no outdoor activity, so other than maybe a delivery coming through, you shouldn't have anything outside, but it does speak to decibel levels, and it does also speak to the work hours.
Okay, but I just hope you understand my concern, that I didn't want to have
Right, I
to...
think Mr. DeFazio can probably pretty much sum it up. Is the noise at your shop going to be any louder than what's already currently on Route 33? Because his recording studio is basically right off the shoulder there. And your outdoor activity, it's not going to consist of any type of activity that's going to be louder than the existing traffic, the traffic noise that's already there, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so there's no repeated backing up alarms that he's gonna hear, consistently throughout the entire day?
No,
No
no.
revving of engines? So is that basically what you're trying to
That's
get at?
kind of idling
Right.
trucks for hours. that
Right,
kind of-
I understand.
Yeah, because Guy, you're already putting up with, the carting company that's on the corner.
And that's been an issue.
Sure, sure.
Especially
That's,
with the trees that they took out, it's flooding my property also.
But we can all agree that Route 33 is a loud highway. So I don't assume that you're...
That was one of the reasons we went with the block building. It's a more robust building, and I wanted to really build something sound, so
Right.
that's why I changed the design of the building itself.
Great, and I do feel confident, as long as we brought it up, that was my concern, and I'm satisfied.
Great.
If
Thank
we
you.
all are. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that have any comments or questions? All right.
That's all we have.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
You just have to close
Yep, seeing none, I will close the public portion. If that's it, then I will take a motion to approve
got it?
case number SB 1074, 1300 Equities LLC.
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second approval of SP 1074.
Eileen, call the roll, please.
Chief Kudrick?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Everett?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Chairman Seaman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Mr. Monroe, you're just going to leave the exhibits for me? Thank you.
All right, moving on. Next case before the board is case number SD 2978F, Edward and Lourdes McNamee for final major subdivision.
There's your certificate for
I've had that for you for months, but I haven't seen it.
My dog, I don't do
Members
anymore,
of the board, David Trombador from the offices of Lawrence Latrell, appearing on behalf of...
If you could just wait a second, make sure Eileen's picking it up. I don't know if she can hear you.
You can sit, because that's a microphone on the table. Just pull it closer to you, please. That bar is a microphone.
Yes, David Trombador from the offices of Lawrence Latrell on behalf of the applicants. We're here on...
Counsel, can you just spell your last name for me?
Yes, T as in Thomas, R-O-M as in Michael, B as in boy, A-D as in David, O-R-E.
Okay.
First name David. We're here requesting final approval of a major subdivision. Preliminary approval was granted in September of 2018. There are essentially no changes to the preliminary, but there were a number of conditions which the board imposed for approval of final. Mr. Walter Hopkins, our engineer, who was previously qualified by the board on the preliminary application, is here with me. And I'm going to ask him to go through those conditions and how we intend to comply. And I believe I was not present. Mr. Hopkins was present at the preliminary meeting with your engineer. And I believe there were one or two issues that arose there concerning trees, concerning a stormwater basin. And he can address those as well as I can. But with that, I would probably ask Mr. Hopkins to come forward and be sworn.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Walter Hopkin, H-O-P-K-I-N.
If you could just re-qualify Mr. Hopkins.
Well, Mr. Hopkins, you were originally qualified as the engineer on this project for the preliminary application. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm a licensed professional engineer in the states of New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. I'm also a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm also a certified municipal engineer in the state of New Jersey. I received my Bachelor of Science from Drexel University.
And have any of your credentials changed between the time of the preliminary approval and today?
No, I paid all my fees.
Very good. You haven't been suspended or anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay. I offer Mr. Hopkins as our expert engineer.
And we will accept Mr. Hopkins' credentials.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if you'd like, I can, really, what I have before you this evening is a color-rendered version of the site. Rather than produce a new exhibit, it's the same exhibit that we used at the preliminary hearing. I don't know if you want to just refer to it or...
Your application, whatever you guys would like.
Yeah.
Well, I think we could probably redate it and remark it so that it's clear that we are in fact using the same exhibit. Otherwise, all we have is a written record. But I think it would be useful for you to have the exhibit itself.
So this will be A11, and this is a color rendering of the final subdivision plan?
Perhaps we should move it closer to the board. Or
the board would like, I have reduced versions that I can hand out.
That would probably be good.
I think that would be helpful.
Especially since we don't have the monitor tonight.
And everybody's social distancing, so it's hard to get everybody to get the same perspective.
I don't need one.
Oh, there's a little.
I'll mark my copy, Walter, so I don't even need the large one.
Okay. Thank you.
So essentially, it's the same plan that the board saw in 2018. The minor changes that we've made that you actually won't even see reflected on this is that we did add sidewalks to both sides of the cul-de-sac. That is reflected on the plans that your professionals reviewed. We added a parking restriction so that parking is not allowed on both sides. We increased the paved cul-de-sac radius from 37 feet to 40. One of your professionals, Ms. Newman, had a comment and requested that the cul-de-sac right-of-way be extended also to 50 feet, which has not been done, but would be done as a condition of approval. And just like to note that the detention basin as well as the open space will remain deed restricted, but in a homeowners association. So the homeowners association will be responsible for maintenance of the basin and the upkeep of the open space. I believe that we've addressed all of the conditions of preliminary. They either carry forward, we've addressed them, or I have either just clarified them, or I think there was one more that Ms. Newman asked that we clarify, and that we should add the farm notice language to our final plat. There's a few additional comments that Ms. Newman's office added. Just a note that the open space will be restricted from further development. I think the applicant would agree to a deed restriction in a form that's acceptable to your professionals and attorney. As I previously indicated, we will increase the cul-de-sac radius from 47 feet to 50 as requested. There was an issue. We're proposing to replace all of the trees on site and supplement the existing, because it is a wooded site. Ms. Spiro raised a concern that perhaps we couldn't fit them all in there. We really won't know until the time of construction. So I believe, and I'll let Ms. Spiro talk about this, but what the applicant would propose was that those trees will be purchased. They'll either be put in on the site, or they could be donated to the township for use elsewhere within the municipality. Ms. Newman's office also found a discrepancy with a well setback, which we will correct, and everything else in all the professionals' letters we could comply with. If there's anything specific that your professionals would like me to address, or the board, I'd be more than happy to.
Mr. Chairman, as the board is well aware, allowing the financial contribution for tree replacement is not as of right. It's relief that the board has to give via, not via variance, but it's relief that's in the ordinance. They have to show some sort of hardship in order to do that. What I would just ask is a little more on the record regarding the number of trees that you're talking about, and just a little bit about the property as to why it's not going to be possible to replace them, and what the maximum amount of trees you would believe, might be replaced. It could be less, as the building process goes on, but sort of the maximum that you could contemplate.
So, Ron, just to clarify, right now, they're not seeking relief. They're seeking to plant them all on site. And I think, Shari can speak to her point. Her concern was the ability to actually physically plant those trees. I think it's 330 trees.
Well, but what the applicant said was if they can't, then they want to do a financial contribution. So that...
No. They're planning on, if whatever they can't fit, they would like to have the trees. They want to plant all the trees. So if they can't fit it here, they would like to plant them elsewhere, if that's because the ordinance allows for planting on other public properties. So yes, so they would like to buy all 555 trees to go in on this site, but for what will not fit, they would like to put them in another location.
So there's no financial in lieu of contribution.
Right, they will not be paying.
But they'll be planting the trees, or they're just going to donate them to our shade tree commission? So we can decide where they're going to go?
Whatever you wish.
Well, certainly I think the town would, decide where they should go. But if they would normally be put on this site and they'd be planting themselves, I'd imagine they'd plant them, but...
That's fine.
Is
We would accept that.
To the extent that they're not planted on site, yes, they would work with the town.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Right, yes.
They're going to still plant them, or the volunteers that work for the shade tree going to have
Well,
to plant
I
them?
don't know who physically will plant them, but the determination as to where they're going to go off-site would be done in conjunction
Sure.
with the town.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
So we would make sure that they weren't delivered until there was an appropriate place for them to be planted.
Like phases?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yeah, and the applicant would do the planting, so Shade Tree Commission isn't stuck with digging holes for 330 trees.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems fairly unique compared to what we've done in the past. I would like to just get the opinion of the board overall, if they think that sounds good, because I'm all for trees.
Well,
so.
they're permitted to do that under the ordinance.
Okay.
They need permission to not plant the tree and give you money in lieu of, but
Gotcha.
they're permitted to plant on-site and off-site.
Gotcha.
Instead of giving money up,
Awesome.
they're going to
That's
supply the material.
Yeah, But you are right, most applicants don't go the extra step to try and actually physically plant them, they just want to write the check.
And I would think in Howell that the preference would be the tree over the dollar, so.
So that's the way the ordinance is written, because the ordinance is written that you can do that as of right, you don't need permission to do it. So there is a preference, you're correct, in the ordinance to do it this way.
Okay.
As far, Ron, regarding how this would end up happening with, COs for these properties and whatnot, would there be any requirement, that they need to figure out the numbers so they could allow, like, the Shade Tree Commission to determine these locations? I'm just
Well,
wondering.
there's going to have to be
when
a
we get to the end.
determination, because we don't even know whether there's going to need to be
Right.
planting off-site. So absolutely, the first step is to understand how many trees need to be replaced. And if they're not going to be replaced on-site, then we'll have a condition in the resolution that probably will require like a developer's agreement in order to work out, the exact step-by-step that's going to happen.
Okay.
Bond.
Yeah, I just want to avoid confusion for when we get there. So.
May I? I do have a concern that should this be successful, and the resolution should read the size of the tree, because we can definitely use trees in Soldier Memorial. I mean, there's definitely places these can go. But because this isn't something that's familiar to me in my 12-plus years on planning and zoning, I'd like a mechanism in place in resolution for size of trees, and I guess they would be the same type of tree that they're removing, or what would have been.
That's not how our ordinance reads. Our ordinance tells them the size of the replacement trees, so they'd have to comply with what the ordinance requires by way of replacement.
And that mechanism is controlled by Sherry and,
Right, and it's
tightly.
also,
Okay.
the details and the sizes and quantities, everything's on the plan already, and they even put on a specific species that they're going to select from. So it's not just a free-for-all, so they're not going to put all sorts of, species we don't want.
That's
So
my
that's
only
already on
concern,
there.
that we're all very clear what we're getting in return, if
Yep.
they need to do that. Perfect.
Well, Evelyn, I can tell you, for being in business with this kind of stuff, the list here is very, very well prepared as far as shade trees and evergreens and everything. So if they come through with this plan, and a bunch of these don't go on that site, and we could move them to.
I have every trust in Sherry that this plan will be
Yeah.
totally done in its entirety, so
Yeah, well,
we're good.
This list is a good list, so if they don't make it on that site, we could find some good spots for them,
We have
believe me.
places.
All right.
Any other questions from members of the board? I just have one. As far as the infiltration basin,
Yes.
is there any kind of screening or fencing that's going to be around it in terms of safety?
That's a very good point. There is supposed to be a fence. Somehow it didn't make it onto the plan, or the glare got turned off. So Ms. Newman actually raised that in her letter, and we will make sure as a condition of approval that the basin is fenced with a fence that is appropriate for the township and acceptable to Ms. Newman's office.
Any other comments or questions from our professionals?
No, Mr. Chairman, I would just note, we had gone through all of the conditions of the preliminary approval in here. The applicant had addressed them all, except as testified tonight, which was just the language for the right to farm as one of the conditions, but there was environmental stuff that had to be submitted and other things of that nature. So at this point, I am satisfied, and the applicant agreed to the comments we had.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else? No? Second? Yeah, no, I agree.
When, if this was to be approved, when does it start? Immediately, or a couple of years, or?
I'm just the engineer. So
The
applicant's not here, the attorney is.
I'm not sure, but I know that there are limits in the statute as to when final approval expires. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, actually, I think it was maybe 2 Fridays ago, the governor signed the 2020 Permit Extension Act also. So all of these projects, fall within the Permit Extension Act, and they have extended amounts of time now to get them done due to, the the virus and the atmosphere we have in the construction industry.
Well, this will be a nice addition to the township, I can tell you, a new cul-de-sac on that end of town, which is a lot of farmland, and these are nice lots, and, you know, this will be a nice addition if it goes through. Full, so, good luck.
Thank you.
Is that all we have?
Yes, that we submit.
All right. At this point, open to the public, Eileen? All right, at this point, we'll open it to any members of the public that have any questions or comments regarding this application. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public portion. All right. At this point, we'll entertain a motion to approve case number SD 2978F, Edward and Lords McNamee.
I would make a motion to approve case number SD 78F, Edward and Lords McNamee, final major subdivision plan.
I will second it.
Eileen, please call the roll.
Chief Kudrick?
Yes.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Everett? Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Chairman Seaman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, thank you for your time in the township.
Thank you very much.
Boy, that's been a long time coming, that project.
Mr. Cucciaro, any reason to go into executive?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I will take a
Much
motion to
cleaner.
adjourn.
I'll take it. Thank you.
All in favor?
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned.
Aye.
Why can't they all be?